So is this movie good or is it bad? I'll tell you. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of Michael, the new film from director Antoine Fuqua. Okay, so Michael is a biopic similar to like Bohemian Rhapsody or Straight Outta Compton. It basically follows Michael Jackson from his early days with the Jackson 5, his struggles with his father, who's played by Colman Domingo, his love for things that were beyond friends, his animal loves, and his love of Peter Pan and his, childlike innocence. Also his like attachment to his mother, as well as the Jackson 5 themselves. And it leads into his early career where he eventually became super famous, of course, with Thriller and Off the Wall, and of course, eventually Bad, where this movie ends. And it's basically a 2-hour, similar to Bohemian Rhapsody, study of Michael Jackson, who is played by Jaafar Jackson, who is Jermaine Jackson's son, and his struggles to deal with his overbearing, almost abusive father, and the nature of how he kind of overtook himself to basically become the biggest pop star in the world. And it has people like Miles Teller and stuff like that, as well as a cameo by, of course, Mike Meyers. And it basically shows in a kind of entertainment version of Michael Jackson as who he was and how he tried to care and tried to be unique in his talents and how good he was and how his mother pushed him to be really successful, and his father kind of, was a little bit of a difficult person to deal with, Joe Jackson, of course. So that's Michael in a nutshell. It's not too much more to talk about with that. So I'm late to the game. I didn't get a chance to see the screening of this. I actually went and saw the early access screening that premiered on Wednesday, so that's why you're getting my review now. But I've been kind of interested in this movie because I like Antoine Fuqua, Training Day, and of course his Straight Outta Compton movies. I actually thought it was a good biopic, but I've heard some really bad things about this movie. Similar to like Bohemian Rhapsody, where the performances were considered good, but the movie itself was pretty bad. I mean, this movie's got like a 27 to 30% on Rotten Tomatoes for a reason. But I think when it comes to a movie like this and Michael Jackson's kind of difficult career and difficult personal life, and the fact that this movie, from what I gather and what I read about, seems to be kind of not necessarily whitewashing, but kind of taking a more safe approach, worried me a little bit, because I think when it comes to Michael Jackson, I think you have to push the envelope a little bit. And I think that's what Bohemian Rhapsody's problem was as well, is it didn't push the envelope a lot. So after watching this movie, after going in, seeing what this movie is and what it portrays, and Jaafar Jackson, once again, is Jermaine Jackson's son. He's related to Michael Jackson, so I'm sure he knows from experience of Jermaine Jackson, his kind of history with Michael Jackson. And I will say this about this movie, and I'll get the negatives out of the way first. This movie is pretty standard by biopic sense. I think Walk Hard really ruined the biopic genre with this takedown of how safe these movies seem to be. And like Bohemian Rhapsody, I just don't think it goes hard enough. And I think it tries to be a little sanitization wise on the movie itself and the nature of what it's trying to do. You have John Logan, who's a very famous writer, writing in this movie, and it feels like he was basically tiptoeing around Michael Jackson's very, difficult, different way he viewed the world. I think the movie is just more of a greatest hits album type of movie where it shows some negativity, some bad things that happen with Joe Jackson. I think Colman Domingo is pretty good in this movie as Joe Jackson, but I think the movie plays it safe. And I think this is a movie that, if you don't like biopics, this movie isn't going to change your opinion, to be fairly honest. And I think it's a movie that just is what it is. It's 2 hours and 7 minutes. It's a movie about Michael Jackson rising up to his popularity of becoming one of the greatest superstars of all time. And I think it leaves a lot to be desired, because if this movie plays out like it says at the end, where it says his story continues, then it feels like they're leaning into a part 2. Maybe that'll flesh more out. But I honestly don't think this movie does enough, and I don't think Antoine Fuqua does enough to really go for the gusto, really go for the bravado. I think it's more of just, beat by beat by beat, and that's what Bohemian Rhapsody's main problem was. It goes beat by beat by beat. It's more focused on the music. It's more focused on the kind of like the big hit versions of what happened to Michael Jackson in his early years. But that's kind of my main problem. Like I said, it really is just kind of substandard when it comes to its storytelling. But all that said and done, I think the movie at least is entertaining. I think it is a good fan servicey type of movie. I think Jaafar Jackson is Oscar worthy when it comes to his performance. I think this was a very difficult movie to do because he's related by blood to the individual he's playing in this movie. So I'm sure he was under a lot of pressure by the community to give a good portrayal. And I think he is truly the standout of this movie. I think he really works. I think he does a nice job of like the layers, or at least trying to attempt the layers of this movie. He has to hold all of it on his shoulders. This is the first film he's ever done. And I think, probably he leaned into his history of his career, leaned to the history of Michael Jackson to really get a good sense. And he feels like Michael Jackson. He portrays like Michael Jackson. He doesn't feel like he is, overstepping his bounds. It does feel a little safe, but I think there is enough layer there that I think Jaafar Jackson does a really nice job with what he's doing. I think Nia Long, who plays his mother, is also really good in this movie as the matriarch and the one who's having to deal with the most difficult situation outside of Michael, and the simple fact that he has, we have this abusive father. He's very demanding. He's very overbearing. And you watch the Jaafar Jackson character really play it well on screen. And once again, I think Colman Domingo is really good in the movie too, because once again, he's very similar to the Danny Glover character in Color Purple, where he has to play a character so unlikable and so gratuitously nasty that it's very difficult. And I think Colman Domingo does a really nice job. And I think it's a very difficult performance to play. And I think he does a really wonderful job of just enveloping himself into the character itself. But you have like KeiLyn Durrel Jones, who plays his chauffeur / friend, who plays Billy Bray, and yeah, Miles Teller, who plays his the guy who really helped him further his career. You also have the guys who play like Quincy Jones and stuff like that, and you see some of the great hits of Michael Jackson's career, whether it be ABC or Bad or Thriller and stuff like that. So it does at least a decent job of the camera work, and the visuals are good, and the music's really, it pops because it's so catchy and so well put together. And that's where the positives lie. Like I said, I'm more middle of the road. If I were to give it a star review, it'd be 2.5 out of 4 or whatever, because I think it does at least attempt to be an interesting, entertaining film. And this is going to be a crowd pleaser more than anything, especially if you're a huge Michael Jackson fan. There were people in the crowd or people in the audience that were watching it when I was there that were really into it, that were laughing when they should have laughed, that they were into it when the songs were playing. And I think it's a movie that really attempts and really does succeed, at least be an entertaining movie like Bohemian Rhapsody, but it doesn't go more than surface level. It really is just kind of, it has a little bit here, it has a little bit there, and it really is sanitizing a little bit of Michael Jackson, of who he was. So overall, it's not a bad movie. It's not as bad as a lot of people say. It's not a great movie. It's not as great as some people I know say. I think it's just more, if you go in with expectations, if you go in with a certain level of understanding that this movie is going to play it safe and is not going to be super deep like some of these movies should go, I think you'll be on the right mindset. So that's my overall take on Michael. It'll be in theaters. It's going to do very well, whether I liked it or not. But that's how I feel about it. So overall, enjoyable, decent flick. So there you go. Anyways, with that said, that is my take on Michael, which will be in theaters. So I do appreciate you watching. Comments below. What is your favorite Michael Jackson song? What is your favorite, biopic? Let me know in the comments. But otherwise, if you like what you see on the channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like the video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out, guys.